You think your problem is that people don't like you enough, but your real problem is that you like yourself too little to risk being disliked. You've built such a perfect cage of social acceptance that you've convinced yourself the bars are made of gold. You're so invested in being likable that you become invisible to yourself, to your purpose, to your power. And what's worse, you're teaching your children, your friends, your colleagues that this is what success looks like, this quiet desperation dressed up as social grace. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to be liked? The constant checking of your phone to see who's responded to your post. The careful crafting of every message to make sure you don't offend anyone. The mental gymnastics of trying to remember which version of yourself you presented to which person. The endless loop of wondering if you're good enough, likable enough, worthy enough of others' approval. It's time to stop. Right here, right now. You're carrying around a heavy burden that was never yours to bear. This obsession with being likable is slowly eroding your soul, diminishing your light, and stealing your authentic power. And what's most tragic about this situation is that you've convinced that this is just how life works. Let me tell you what happens when you live your life trying to be likable. You become a chameleon, constantly changing your colors to match your environment. In meetings, you hold back your brilliant ideas because they might be too controversial. At family gatherings, you swallow your truth because it might make others uncomfortable. On social media, you carefully curate a personality that's just edgy enough to be interesting, but safe enough to be widely accepted. And in this endless dance of people-pleasing, do you know what gets lost? You. The real you. The magnificent, flawed, complex, beautiful you. Think about the last time you made a decision. Was it truly your decision, or was it influenced by how others would perceive it? When was the last time you spoke your truth without first running it through the filter of, but what will they think? There's a profound difference between being kind and being likable. Kindness comes from a place of authentic care for others. Likability comes from a place of fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being. Kindness enriches both the giver and receiver. Likability depletes you while keeping others comfortable. But here's what nobody tells you about this exhausting pursuit of likability. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. The great paradox is that true connection, true influence, true impact comes not from being likable, but from being real, from standing in your truth, even when that truth makes others uncomfortable, from having the courage to say, this is who I am without adding. I hope that's okay. Right now in this room, there are people nodding their heads because they recognize themselves in these words. You know who you are. You're the one who apologizes for having an opinion. You're the one who shrinks yourself to make others feel bigger. You're the one who's exhausted from maintaining all these different versions of yourself. Every time you choose likability over authenticity, you're not just betraying yourself. You're robbing the world of your unique contribution, that innovative idea you kept to yourself because it was too different. Someone needed to hear it. That truth you didn't speak because it might ruffle feathers. Someone needed that truth to break free from their own chains. When you try to be likable, you become a watered-down version of yourself. And the world doesn't need more watered-down people. The world needs people who are fully alive, fully present, fully themselves with all their sharp edges and uncomfortable truths. Look at nature. A rose doesn't try to be likable. It doesn't apologize for its thorns or try to be more like a daisy. A thunderstorm doesn't attempt to be more appealing by toning down its lightning. The ocean doesn't minimize its waves to make sailors more comfortable. You might be thinking, but I need people to like me, to succeed in my career, my relationships, my life. Let me challenge that belief. What you actually need is to be respected, to be trusted, to be authentic. Likability might get you in the door, but it's authenticity that keeps you in the room. Remember those people you deeply admire? The ones who've made a real difference in the world? They weren't trying to be likable. They were trying to be true. They were willing to stand alone, to speak up when others were silent, to challenge the status quo when everyone else was comfortable with mediocrity. The cost of constantly trying to be likable is immense. It's not just the mental exhaustion of maintaining different personas. It's not just the emotional drain of constantly seeking approval. The real cost is the slow death of your spirit, the gradual extinction of your unique voice, the silent burial of your true potential. Every time you choose likability over authenticity, you're making a trade. You're trading your power for permission. You're trading your voice for validation. You're trading your truth for temporary acceptance. And let me tell you, that's a bad trade. Always. You might be worried about what happens when you stop trying to be likable. Will people leave? Yes, some will. Will you face criticism? Probably. Will it be uncomfortable? Absolutely. But find your tribe. The people who appreciate you for who you actually are, not who you're pretending to be. You'll discover your voice, your real voice, not the one you've carefully crafted to be inoffensive. You'll experience the profound relief of not having to remember which version of yourself you're supposed to be today. The truth is, when you stop trying to be likable, you become more than likable, you become memorable. You become influential, you become powerful. Not because you're trying to be any of those things, but because you're finally being real. Think about your own life. Who has had the biggest impact on you? Was it the person who always agreed with you, who never challenged your thinking, who carefully maintained a likable persona? Or was it the person who spoke their truth, who showed you a different way of thinking, who had the courage to be themselves even when it wasn't popular? The people who change our lives are rarely the ones who are trying to be likable. They're the ones who are trying to be true. They're the ones who chose authenticity over approval, purpose over popularity, truth over comfort. There's a freedom that comes with abandoning the pursuit of likability. It's the freedom to speak without first calculating the impact of your words, the freedom to make decisions without wondering how they'll look to others, the freedom to live your life instead of performing it. But let me be clear. This isn't about being intentionally difficult or unnecessarily confrontational. This isn't about ignoring others' feelings or dismissing the importance of human connection. This is about being real, being true, being authentic, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The world doesn't need more people trying to be likable. The world needs more people trying to be authentic. The world needs your truth, your voice, your unique perspective. The world needs the real you, not the carefully curated, socially acceptable, watered-down version of you. So here's your challenge. For the next week, catch yourself every time you're about to modify your behavior to be more likable. Notice when you're about to apologize for having an opinion. Pay attention to when you're about to shrink yourself to make others more comfortable. And in those moments, choose authenticity instead. What would you say if you weren't trying to be likable? What would you do if you weren't worried about others' approval? Who would you be if you weren't constantly trying to fit in? The answer to those questions is your path to freedom. The answer to those questions is your true power. The answer to those questions is your real life, the one you've been putting on hold while you chase the illusion of likability. Your life is not a popularity contest. It's not a performance to be rated. It's not a product to be marketed. Your life is your message to the world. And that message becomes meaningless when it's filtered through the lens of likability. The most powerful thing you can do is to be yourself. Unapologetically, authentically, completely. Not because it will make people like you, but because it will make you free. Not because it will make your life easier, but because it will make your life. The journey from likability to authenticity isn't easy. It's not comfortable. It's not always pretty. But it's necessary. It's necessary for your growth, for your happiness, for your impact in the world. You weren't born to be likable. You were born to be powerful. You were born to be real. You were born to be you in all your complex, contradictory, magnificent truth. Stop trying to be likable. Start trying to be true. Start trying to be real. Start trying to be you. When you stop trying to be likable, you become something much more important. You become unforgettable. When you stop performing and start being, you become unstoppable. When you stop seeking approval and start speaking truth, you become unshakable. The world is waiting for the real you. Not the likable you, not the acceptable you, not the safe you, the real you, the true you, the authentic you. So let go of the need to be liked. Let go of the addiction to approval. Let go of the fear of judgment. Step into your truth. Speak your mind. Live your values. Be yourself. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the times you weren't likable enough. You'll regret the times you weren't real enough. You'll regret the times you chose silence over truth, comfort over growth, approval over authenticity. The choice is yours. You can continue the exhausting pursuit of likability, or you can embrace the liberating power of authenticity. You can keep trying to fit in, or you can dare to stand out. You can keep seeking approval, or you can start seeking. Choose truth. Choose authenticity. Choose you. Because when you do, something magical happens. You don't just change your life, I think you change the lives of everyone around you. You give others permission to be real. You show others what's possible when you stop trying to be likable and start trying to be true. The world doesn't need another likable person. The world needs you, the real you, the true you, the authentic you. So stop trying to be likable. Start trying to be real. Start trying to be true. Start trying to be you. Because that's not just enough. It's everything. The greatest prison isn't built with concrete walls and iron bars. It's built with the expectations of others, reinforced by our own fears and maintained by our desperate need to be liked. Think about your morning routine. How much of it is genuinely about preparing for your day and how much is about preparing to be acceptable to others? The careful selection of clothes, not based on what you love, but on what others won't judge. The precise application of makeup or styling of hair, not for your own joy, but to meet some invisible standard. The rehearsal of small talk and practice smiles in the mirror, not to express genuine emotion, but to ensure you'll fit in. We become so accustomed to this prison that we decorated it and called it home. We've convinced ourselves that this constant performance is normal, that this perpetual people-pleasing is just how life works. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly free? When was the last time you acted without first considering how others would perceive your actions? There's a profound difference between adapting to social situations and losing yourself in them. Adaptation is a skill. It helps us navigate different environments while maintaining our core identity. But what many of us are doing isn't adaptation, it's erasure. We're not adjusting our behavior, we're erasing our authenticity. Every time you laugh at a joke you don't find funny just to fit in. You're teaching your soul to be silent. Every time you agree with an opinion you don't share just to avoid conflict, you're training your mind to value peace over truth. Every time you hide your real feelings behind a socially acceptable mask, you're telling your heart that it's not safe to be real. The most dangerous part of this pattern is how subtle it is. It doesn't happen in dramatic moments of conscious choice. It happens in small, seemingly insignificant moments. A slight hesitation before speaking your mind. A small adjustment to your opinion to match the group. A tiny compromise of your values to keep the peace. These small compromises accumulate like grains of sand, building up until they bury your authentic self, so deep you almost forget it exists. Almost, but not quite. Because somewhere inside you, there's still a voice that knows the truth. There's still a part of you that remembers who you really are. You can feel it sometimes, can't you? In those quiet moments when you're alone, when there's no one to perform for, when you can finally drop the act. In those moments, you catch glimpses of your true self, the self that exists beyond the need for approval, beyond the desire to be liked. That self isn't concerned with being likable. That self isn't worried about fitting in. That self isn't calculating the social cost of every word and action. That self is simply powerfully, magnificently real. But here's what happens when we ignore that self for too long. We start to feel disconnected, not just from others, but from ourselves. We experience what I call the likable life paradox. The more we try to be likable, the less we feel truly liked. Because deep down, we know that the version of us that people are liking isn't real. This creates a peculiar kind of loneliness. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who know your carefully crafted persona, but have never met your authentic self. It's like living in a house full of mirrors, each one reflecting back a different version of who you think others want you to be. The cost of this perpetual performance isn't just emotional, it's physical. Your body knows when you're living a lie. It manifests in tension headaches, in stomach knots, in sleepless nights spent rehearsing conversations and replaying interactions. Your body is trying to tell you something. This isn't how you're meant to live. But there's hope. There's always hope. Because the truth is, you don't have to keep living this way. You don't have to keep performing. You don't have to keep seeking approval. You don't have to keep trying to be likable. It's about the path to freedom begins with a simple but profound realization. You're not responsible for other people's perceptions of you. Let me repeat that. You are not responsible for other people's perceptions of you. Their opinions, their judgments, their approval or disapproval. None of that is your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to be true to yourself, to live authentically, to speak your truth with compassion and act from a place of integrity. Think about the people you most admire. The ones who've made a real difference in your life or in the world. Were they trying to be likable, or were they trying to be true? Were they seeking approval, or were they seeking truth? The most impactful people in history weren't trying to win a popularity contest. They were trying to live their truth to fulfill their purpose, to be who they were meant to be. And in doing so, they changed the world. You have that same power within you. You have the power to change your world by being authentically you. But first, you have to be willing to let go of the need to be liked by everyone. This doesn't mean becoming unkind or inconsiderate. In fact, true authenticity often leads to deeper kindness because it comes from a place of genuine connection rather than obligation or fear. When you're being real, your kindness is real. It's not a strategy to win approval. It's a natural expression of who you are. The journey from likability to authenticity requires courage. It requires the courage to face your fears, to question your beliefs, to challenge your patterns. It requires the courage to ask yourself hard questions. Who am I when I'm not trying to please others? What do I believe when I'm not trying to fit in? What do I want when I'm not trying to want what others think I should want? These questions might feel uncomfortable. They might even feel threatening. Because when you start asking them, you start dismantling the walls of your comfortable prison. You start challenging the status quo of your life. You start disrupting the patterns that have kept you safe, but small. They're not really about comfort zone. They're about fear. Fear disguises comfort. Fear masquerading as wisdom. Fear pretending to be protection. Your comfort zone might feel safe, but it's actually dangerous. Because in that zone of perpetual people-pleasing, of constant performance, of endless seeking for approval, you're slowly losing yourself. You're gradually diminishing your light. You're steadily silencing your voice. The world needs your voice. Not the carefully modulated, socially acceptable version of your voice. Not the watered-down, inoffensive version of your voice. Your real voice, your true voice, your authentic voice. Because here's what happens when you find the courage to use your real voice. You inspire others to find theirs. When you stand in your truth, you give others permission to stand in theirs. When you choose authenticity over approval, you show others that it's possible. This is how real change happens. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through individual acts of courage. Through daily choices to be real instead of likable. Through moment-by-moment decisions to choose truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, reality over performance. The time has come to stop trying to be likable. The time has come to start being real. The time has come to let go of the exhausting pursuit of approval and embrace the liberating power of authenticity. Because when you do, something extraordinary happens. You don't just change your life, you change the lives of everyone around you. You become a living example of what's possible when you choose truth over pretense, courage over comfort, authenticity over approval. The world doesn't need another likable person. The world needs you, the real you, the true you, the authentic you, the you that exists beyond the need for approval, the you that lives in truth rather than fear, the you that chooses to be real rather than acceptable. That's the you the world is waiting for. That's the you that can make a difference. That's the you that can change everything. Your real power lies in the parts of yourself you've been trying to hide, those quirks you've been suppressing, those opinions you've been softening, those edges you've been smoothing out, that fire you've been dampening, that light you've been dimming. Every time you walk into a room and automatically scan for ways to make yourself more acceptable, more palatable, more likable, you're diminishing your power. Every time you hold back your truth to keep others comfortable, you're not just betraying yourself. You're robbing the world of something irreplaceable. You're authentic. Let's talk about what happens in your body when you're constantly trying to be likable. That tension in your shoulders. It's from carrying the weight of others' expectations. That knot in your stomach, It's from swallowing your truth. That headache, that won't go away. It's from the constant calculation of how to be acceptable. Your body is speaking to you in the only language it knows, pain. It's telling you that this perpetual performance is unsustainable. But what if you could live differently? What if, instead of asking, will they like this? You started asking, is this true for me? What if, instead of measuring your words against others' comfort, you measured them against your own integrity? What if, instead of trying to fit in, you dared to stand out? The truth is, your uniqueness is not something to be tolerated. It's something to be celebrated. Your differences are not flaws to be fixed. They're gifts to be shared. Your perspectives, even the uncomfortable ones, are not problems to be solved. They're contributions to be made. Think about social media for a moment. How many times have you crafted and recrafted a post trying to strike that perfect balance between interesting and inoffensive? How many times have you edited your life to make it more likable? How many times have you diminished your achievements to avoid making others uncomfortable, or amplified them to impress others? This digital dance of approval seeking is exhausting, but it's just a symptom of a deeper issue. We've become so focused on being likable that we've forgotten how to be real. We become so obsessed with our online personas that we've lost touch with our authentic selves. But here's what nobody tells you about social media. The posts that truly resonate, that genuinely connect, that actually make a difference, aren't the perfectly polished ones. They're the raw, real, authentic ones. They're the ones where someone had the courage to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be themselves. The same is true in real life. The conversations that change us aren't the ones filled with safe, careful words. They're the ones where someone dared to speak their truth. The relationships that transform us aren't the ones based on careful performance. They're the ones built on authentic connection. Consider your closest friendships. The ones where you can show up exactly as you are. The ones where you don't have to perform or pretend. The ones where you're loved not despite your quirks and imperfections, but because of them. That's what becomes possible when you stop trying to be likable and start being real. But let's be honest. This journey from likability to authenticity isn't easy. It's not a smooth path from performance to truth. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's sometimes painful. Because when you start showing up as your authentic self, you disrupt the comfortable patterns around you. You challenge the status quo. You make waves. Some people won't like it. Some people will push back. Some people will try to put you back in your box of acceptable behavior. And that's okay. Because their reaction isn't about you, it's about them. It's about their own fears, their own discomfort with authenticity, their own struggle with. Your job isn't to manage their reactions. Your job isn't to make them comfortable. Your job isn't to be likable. Your job is to be real. Your job is to be true. Your job is to be you. Think about the last time you were completely, unabashedly yourself. Maybe it was just for a moment. Maybe it was with someone who makes you feel safe. Maybe it was when you forgot to perform, forgot to please, forgot to try to be likable. Remember how that felt? That feeling of freedom, of alignment, of truth? That's your birthright. That's how you're meant to live all the time. You can't just decide one day to be authentic and expect everything to fall into place. It's a practice, a daily choice, a moment-by-moment commitment to truth over comfort, to reality over performance, to authenticity over approval. It starts with small moments of courage. Speaking up in a meeting when you have a different perspective, saying no to something that doesn't align with your values, sharing your truth even when it makes others uncomfortable, standing firm in your convictions even when it would be easier to bend. Each time you choose authenticity over likability, you build a stronger connection with your true self. Each time you speak your truth instead of saying what others want to hear, you strengthen your authentic voice. Each time you stand in your power instead of shrinking to make others comfortable, you expand your capacity for real impact. The world is hungry for authenticity. In a sea of careful performances and polished personas, genuine truth stands out like a lighthouse in the darkness. Your truth, your real voice, your authentic self has the power to guide others home to themselves. But first, you have to be willing to let go. Let go of the need to be liked by everyone. Let go of the addiction to approval. Let go of the fear of judgment. Let go of the belief that you need to be different than you are to be worthy of love, respect, the very things you're trying to hide, the parts of yourself you're trying to change, the aspects of your personality you're trying to suppress. These are often your greatest gifts. These are the things that make you unique. These are the things that make you powerful. These are the things that make you your sensitivity. It's not a weakness. It's a superpower that allows you to understand others deeply, your intensity. It's not too much. It's the fire that fuels your passion and drives change, your questioning mind. It's not a problem. It's the source of innovation and growth. Stop apologizing for who you are. Stop trying to fit into spaces that weren't built for you. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable with their darkness. Stop trying to be likable and start being real. Because when you do, you don't just change your own life, you change the lives of everyone around you. You show others what's possible when you choose authenticity over approval. You demonstrate what's available when you choose truth over comfort. You reveal what's achievable when you choose power over popularity. The world doesn't need more likable people. The world needs more real people, more authentic people, more people willing to stand in their truth, speak their mind, and live their values. The world needs you, the real you, the true you, the authentic you. So let go of likability, embrace your authenticity, step into your power, speak your truth, live your values, be yourself. Because there's a moment that comes in every life when you realize that all the energy you've spent trying to be likable has cost you something precious, your own inner peace. This moment often arrives quietly, perhaps in the middle of laughing at a joke you don't find funny, or nodding along with an opinion you don't share, or pretending to be less than you are to make someone else feel more than they are. Let's talk about what actually happens when you start living authentically. Not the Instagram version of authenticity, not the carefully curated role. That's just another form of performance. But true authenticity, the kind that sometimes makes your hands shake and your voice quiver because it's so raw and real. First, you'll feel uncomfortable, deeply, profoundly uncomfortable, because you spent years building a fortress of likability around yourself, and now you're choosing to step out from behind those walls. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable, maybe even a little afraid. This discomfort isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're finally doing something right. Your relationships will change. Some will deepen beyond what you thought possible because real recognizes real. Others will fade away because they were built on the foundation of your performance rather than your truth. This sorting process isn't a loss. It's a clarification. It's the universe helping you identify your true tribe. Your decision-making will transform. Instead of weighing every choice against the scale of others' approval, you'll start measuring them against your own inner compass. The questions change from what will they think, to how what feels true for me, from how will this look, to how does this align with my values. Your energy will shift. All that mental and emotional energy you've been spending on being likable, calculating your words, monitoring your behavior, managing others' perceptions, suddenly becomes available for other things. Creative things, meaningful things, things that actually matter to you. But here's what really happens when you choose authenticity over likability. You start to experience a different kind of success. Not the kind that looks good on paper or impressive on social media, but the kind that feels right in your soul. The kind that lets you sleep at night, knowing you've been true to yourself. Think about the conversations you're not having because you're afraid of being unlikable. Think about the ideas you're not sharing because they might be too different. Think about the life you're not living because it might not fit others' expectations. Now imagine what becomes possible when you let go of that fear. When you stop trying to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant to contain you. When you start speaking your truth even if your voice shakes. When you start standing in your power even if it makes others uncomfortable. This isn't about becoming selfish or inconsiderate. In fact, true authenticity often leads to deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Because when you're real, you give others permission to be real too. When you're authentic, you create a space where others can be authentic too. Consider how much energy it takes to maintain a likable facade. The constant monitoring of your words and actions, the endless adjustment of your behavior to match others' expectations, the exhausting performance of being who you think others want you to be. Now imagine redirecting all that energy toward being who you actually are, toward pursuing what truly matters to you, toward creating the life you're meant to live, not the one others expect you to live. The truth is, your attempts to be likable are actually diminishing your ability to make a real impact in the world. Because impact doesn't come from being agreeable, it comes from being authentic. It doesn't come from fitting in, it doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being true. Your uniqueness isn't something to be minimized or managed, the greatest asset. Your different perspective isn't something to be silenced. It's your most valuable contribution. Your authentic voice isn't something to be modulated. It's your most powerful tool for change. When you stop trying to be likable, you start being influential, not because you're trying to be, but because authenticity has a power that likability can never match. Real recognizes real. Truth resonates with truth. Authenticity connects with authenticity. But let's be clear about this journey from likability to authenticity isn't a straight line. It's not a simple switch you can flip. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice, a continuous commitment to truth over comfort. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns, days when the pull of likability is strong, days when being authentic feels too hard, too scary, too risky. That's okay. That's normal. That's human. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress. The goal isn't to never fall back into people-pleasing patterns. It's to recognize when you do and choose differently. The goal isn't to never feel the pull of likability. It's to be conscious of that pull and choose authenticity anyway. Think about the legacy you want to leave. Do you want to be remembered as someone who was always likable, always agreeable, always safe? Or do you want to be remembered as someone who was real, who spoke truth, who lived authentically? It's not built on likes and approval. It's built on impact and influence. It's not created through careful performance. It's created through courageous authenticity. Your life is too precious to spend it trying to be likable. Your voice is too valuable to silence it for the sake of approval. Your truth is too important to water it down for the comfort of others. The world needs your authentic voice. It needs your unique perspective. It needs your unfiltered truth. Not because these things are likable, but because they're real. Not because they're comfortable, but because they're true. Every time you choose authenticity over likability, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the world around you. You're showing others what's possible. You're creating a crack in the facade of social performance. You're making space for more truth, more realness, more authenticity. This is your invitation to stop performing and start living, to stop seeking approval and start speaking truth, to stop trying to be likable and start being real. Because when you do, you don't just free yourself, you help free others too. Your authenticity is a gift to the world, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Not because it's polished, but because it's true. Not because it's likable, but because it's you. And you, the real you, the authentic you, the true you, are exactly what the world needs right now.